Hi, welcome back to Coffee Spills and Pineapples. I'm your host, Rafi Niziblian. Before we begin, I'd like to remind you to subscribe. If you're liking these conversations, just subscribe to our YouTube channel or our Spotify. Today, my guest is all the way from Australia, although he's working by chance in New Zealand. Graham Sattler. Hi, Graham.
Hi, Rafi. How are you?
I'm so happy that you made time to be with us today. You are now the CEO of Christchurch Symphonic Orchestra in New Zealand.
In New Zealand. I discovered this orchestra that was increasingly focused on community, more and more focused on community, and a little less focused on preserving the nobility of Western European classical music, which is usually the remit of a symphony orchestra. I found out about this orchestra. The role became available. I found out about the community, that it's pretty connected, pretty motivated to share and build community. So
you're also an academic. You also teach or have taught for a long time. So we'll talk about that. One word that resonated earlier when we were just having the brief conversation is the recreative. You are a recreative. So that's something that I want to catch up with you. But before that, let's grab our coffees and head out to the studio.
Perfect.
Graham, CEO of a symphonic orchestra, must be a challenge.
Yeah.
You started as a musician, trombonist nonetheless. You also sing.
Mm-hmm.
You also compose.
Yeah, a little.
Yeah. So tell us about the recreative process that you'd mentioned, and how you constantly recreate who you are as a musician, as a creative.
It's a great question. Take it, keep it. It's yours.
Okay.
It makes me think, right? And that's important for me. It's very important because I think about, started playing a piano a little bit. There's a lot of music in the house, but I wanted to join the school band. It's a very ordinary story, this, right? But I wanted to join the school band. I was in a graded school that was 2 years before you were allowed to join the school band. But I think I must have been pushy, maybe. I had 2 older brothers who were in the school band, and I used to play their instruments when they brought them home. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing, but I kind of worked out something about how to make a sound. Really, to kind of fast forward through school, it was the thing that I was really interested in. I left school and I joined an orchestra as a trombone player. I thought I would be a career symphony orchestra trombone player.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I thought.
Did you do that for a while?
I did that for a while, but never. I didn't ever do that as a single full-time job, because I also, after a while, when I was about 21, I thought playing trombone's good, but singing would be great if you could do it well. That's what I thought. I thought it would be really nice to add text, to add words, to be more kind of clearly communicating. Wouldn't that be a good thing? I thought.
Sure.
So I had some singing lessons, which is an interesting point because we don't need to learn to sing. We all sing. But anyway, I had some singing lessons.
Some people learn to sing.
Oh, yeah, well, I did. But I think, some people say, I can't sing, I don't sing.
Yeah.
That's not true. But anyway, so yeah, I had singing lessons, and then I actually went to opera school. So in my kind of mid-20s, I became an opera singer. Oh, coming back to your point about recreative, I haven't forgotten.
I'll remind you.
I bet you will. So I was singing, and I was singing in opera, right? And I realized this is great, is modeling on somebody else's creativity, which is fine. Like, that's fine. But people talk about musicians as being creatives, and I didn't feel like I was one. I felt like I was a recreative. But I think then I sort of thought I'd like my own personal voice to a greater degree in that.
Mm-hmm.
So then I actually started writing children's songs.
Right.
And like preschool, like 5.
So you would write them and you would you would perform them,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
on stage, or is this like for broadcast?
So on stage, in recordings, for broadcast, the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, like the national broadcaster.
We had that in Canada too. So
Of course. So they also had a record label.
Right.
Oh, they have a record label.
they do.
So I started then writing, producing, performing, recording, in that area. So but I brought my trombone playing into that and my singing. And then I became a bit of a producer as well, and an arranger, also for some other children's artists. Yeah, that was being more creative. Yeah,
I actually not only recreated other musicians' compositions to perform them, but you also recreated yourself. It's in so many different ways, from going from a musician to go to a composer to actually play your own music.
Yeah.
To sing in an opera. So you actually did several steps
That's true.
to achieve wherever you are today. And this is the journey we actually talk about on this podcast. I think that's the more interesting part rather than where you are now. So throughout this journey, things go our way, and sometimes things become a success. So those are our pineapples. That's how I frame that. And then there's the coffee spills. These are things that don't really go your way. So I see that you haven't really had serious coffee spills, or am I wrong?
No, you're a little wrong. I mean, serious. What's serious? It's not a straight path.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not linear. And I realized what it was like. It was like a, pinball. I remember pinball.
Oh, that's all I was running around.
Do you know where the ball's going to go?
No.
And it bounces off those things, whatever they're called, and you make the best you can of where it goes.
And sometimes the spring actually takes you to the bullseye and you really win big.
And what a beautiful surprise that is. What a wonderful discovery. So that's my career path, actually. And now I thought about it. I think about it that way. And it's a really gratifying thing, because one example of that pinball machine-like career path is I'm here in Yerevan at the moment. That's a very, very, very sweet spot in my life, because I've met people, discovered things I would not have otherwise. And just that, that indicates that the coffee spills can fire you off into other great places. I thought I would be a comfortable, whatever that means, full-time symphony orchestra trombone player for my entire life. That was my kind of intention way back. And then I thought there was a bit of there was some spilt coffee, right? Then I thought I was going to be an opera singer for the rest of my life. And then there was there was some more spilt coffee.
You said you came to Armenia, you met some people. You're not here as a tourist. You are here on a mission, on a project.
Yeah.
So maybe tell us a little bit about that, because in the context that you just introduced, it felt like you're here on a trip and you met lots of good people, and you had really good Khorovats kebab, and that was that. No. But I think you want to touch upon the concert you had yesterday.
Totally.
The community engagement. That's what we want to hear about.
Yeah, I'm definitely here on a mission. Yeah. Definitely. I mean, I came here the first time a few years ago, maybe 2018, actually. First time I came. And I came because I was going to a conference in Georgia. And I mentioned this to a friend of mine in Greece, who happens to be Armenian, who said, "You're going to Georgia, you have to visit Armenia." And of course, my immediate response was, "Well, of course I do."
Yes.
Why didn't I think of that?
That's right.
But
that's why the diasporan Armenians are there, to remind friends that make that trip to Armenia.
There are also those springs on the pinball machine, right? This Armenia, my sort of place. Anyway, so So I did a little bit of research before I came here on I guess the history and the development of music as maybe a community driver or sort of community glue in Armenia. I found out what I could, from abroad, and made some contacts and came here for a week. And then I made some great contacts, and I discovered that from outside of Armenia, there's not a lot known about the development of community music as an entity, as a driver in Armenia. And I thought, I'm really interested. So that's why I've come back a couple of times. But we had a concert last night as part of the Nexus artists.
That's right. Had a guest, and both Anna and
Ayub.
Maalib Ayub. Yeah, he's a Moroccan.
Yeah.
And he was a musician, and they were singing the Gnawa music. I don't, you know this, I'm assuming. Yeah. So this is eye-opening for me as a creative, as an artist that knows about the Middle East, lived in the Middle East. I was brought up in Kuwait for 10 years. I'd never heard about the Gnawa, and that was a beautiful discovery for me.
Connection, right? If you don't have the connection, or the other side is when you get the connection, it just opens up.
That's right.
And even just knowing about it, I think, is enriching.
Totally.
And this is what I found coming to Armenia. And this is what I've discovered in meeting. I met Anna in 2018, Anna Michaelian, who looks after, runs, if you like, Nexus. Incredible person. I met her then, but we found that we had a very similar drive to nourish, maybe, to offer opportunities to community for finding something a little like what you're talking about with the Gnawa music, finding, I suppose, connection, and finding music as a community builder. Anna and I have a very, very similar commitment to that. You would think that there must be millions of people all over the world who have a similar connection. I have to say I'm fortunate enough to travel quite a bit, and it's unusual to find such a connection. Right. And when you find it, you want to exercise it.
Yes.
And that's why we had the concert last night.
When you mentioned meeting people as a pineapple, as a juicy pineapple, so Anna would be the person that you're talking about. And actually, I totally agree with you. Anna is just amazing. Funny enough that you're talking about your childhood or of your youth. And I'm reminded of things that I was involved in. So at 16, you said 16, right?
Yeah. I
was playing the snares in my Air Cadets. Cool. I really wanted to be a singer and musician.
Yeah.
It did, so everything that you're talking about, really like, I remember those years. It's grand. Although I never became a professional musician, music's always been part of what I do.
Totally. It's a part of every civilization, every community that has ever been recorded.
Right.
Talking there about your youth, which sounds fantastic, by the way. I'm reminded that it isn't important, it isn't necessary for people to be able to talk about or understand why music is important to. That doesn't matter at all. At all, I don't think. That they have access to music, that they feel comfortable and capable with, I'm going to use a shocking term, you ready? Musicking. That's an awful word, but it's an academic term, but it's useful actually, because it's having any involvement in the production or whatever of music.
We speak about music, and we talk about where we each grew up.
Yeah,
which is literally across the planet. I grew up in Montreal, so that's very diverse, very eclectic. But one thing that I think sort of connects us here is that both lands are dealing with post-colonial realities and the authenticity of that place that we occupy, perhaps we live in, and the natives and their music and their impact in the culture, not just music. It's important for me to know if you've dealt with that reality as well, because for me in Canada, this is a big, big factor.
Yeah, absolutely. So in Australia, where I was living until almost 4 years ago, and where really is home, I was involved quite a lot over 10 years or nearly 20 years actually with, no, 20 years, um, with connecting to Indigenous peoples and Indigenous cultures within Australia, of which there are many. There are many, many, many nations within, not dissimilar, if I may, with Canada and North America. So yes, and now in New Zealand, I have a lot of, thankfully, a lot of involvement with Māori and also Pacifica peoples. And I say thankfully because the influences and therefore the benefits of connecting to those First Nations, First Peoples musics, it's so informative and in some ways so grounding for those of us that are really settler, populations. There's a challenge and there's a responsibility, big responsibility. The challenge is to, I suppose, in a sense, to be in a place physically, mentally, spiritually, where you can be welcomed. Hopefully, that's what we hope for, to be welcomed into those.
Yes, for sure.
And then to maintain a sort of humility that we settler populations aren't necessarily very good at, for all the obvious, well, I'll say the obvious reasons. That's taking the easy way out, because of the colonizing.
I think recent years we've come to that realization, and we are without sounding as a defensive as my words may sound, but we have been more conscious of that. We have stepped back at some points. I think there's a lot more work to be done. There's a huge amount of damage that was done. And just to sort of praise and learn from the First Nations is something that we can do now before we can take any more further actions.
I agree entirely. And I think the opportunity there and the responsibility is not to feel like we're conscious or inclusive enough. It's not a static thing.
Right.
There's not a point where we've got it. Tick.
Right. Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It's not a checkbox.
No, it's not a checkbox.
No.
And it's like that. I mean, I always say it's boring quoting myself, but how inclusive, like in my work life and my life, it's about inclusion, inclusivity, acceptance, all of that. How inclusive, like, are we all of a sudden inclusive enough? No. Like, how inclusive is inclusive enough? A little bit more. And it's the awareness, certainly of the influences, the existence, the possibilities, the potential, the value of the First Nations cultures and what they can offer, thankfully, through music, or what they can, when I say they don't have to offer anything, but what's there to benefit from.
Right.
That comes through music. It's a real joy. The challenge is being comfortable with being uncomfortable, because I'm not ever going to be an Indigenous person.
No. I pretend we are.
So I'm always the other, but that's fine. Like, that's totally fine. It does mean that I'll personalize it if I may. I need to be comfortable with being a little uncomfortable, and being, I
like how you position yourself as the other, because of all the times, the other is positioned based on who we are, the other to me, right?
Sure.
So when we start thinking of us being the other to the other, in this case, the First Nations, we start understanding more about ourselves than anything else.
Absolutely, I agree entirely. And there's that I'll personalize it, right? I am vulnerable to all of that stuff. And if I'm going to do what I want to do, which is just help humanity, frankly, be more comfortable with connecting through music. That's all. It's a very small thing. But if I'm going to be effective, I claim that hopefully I can be. I need to be comfortable with that, and I need to recognize the vulnerability of being part of that. I am the other, right? And I come from a particular heritage, which isn't entirely proud, right? So if I can be of value, that vulnerability and that recognition of being the other, for me, is essential.
And well, there's a lot of discomfort now around the world, right? I mean, so many issues to think about that divide us more than anything else. I mean, starting from the basic, you know, language, race, color of skin, and religion, and all these things that divide us: the North, the South, the East, the West. And there's just way too much to divisiveness. Music has played an important role, I think, historically, to reconnect this division. I'm reading a book now of Elif Shafak, and she writes about, she's a Turkish novelist, in exile, lives in London, writing about a Turk and a Greek Cypriot couple who've had to move, quite to exile to be exiled from Cyprus. And it's a love story. And their child, we see all that story through the eyes of their child, who starts to discover the other side of their parents, the Greek and the Turkish side. So, the music is a very important part of it. She talks about music, she talks about culture, she talks about the fig tree, just beautifully composed book. And I see this in many different works that Anna is doing, that you've done, that the Kanawa has done, where there's a connection between the different peoples from the different communities where these musicians are working in. Maybe talk a little bit about the work that you do and how you feel that there's a connection and how that connection happens, and maybe the results that you've seen.
Yeah, that's great. I mentioned before, fortunate enough, because I make it a priority to travel a reasonable amount to different parts of the world. I couldn't do that unless it was vacationing, which I never do, right? I couldn't do that if I didn't have the thing that's way better than language, which is music. I mean, people talk about music being the, universal or international language, whatever. I understand that expression, but I think it's better than language.
That's right.
It doesn't require words.
You don't need to understand lyrics, because earlier you mentioned the text, and I wanted to say that text also limits the understanding of the communication, but the music itself, the melody,
there's the emotion, right?
Yeah.
So with the music, and that's why, mothers, right? And I say mothers, I'm going to gender it, right? Because of some mothers who are carrying the babies. So when the baby is born, it's already bonded through the mother's voice.
Right.
And does the mother tend to make, monotonal speeches? No. What does the mother do, particularly once the baby's born? The mother sings. All mothers sing to their children, whether they know it or not. Because there's the emotion. The baby's not born understanding the words of a language, but the baby is totally secure with the meaning of the sound, the highs and the low notes, the quality of the voice.
Right.
So music expresses emotion. The language just gives you the information, right? So that's useful, but the actual music is the thing that brings people together. And I was recently in China, and then last week I was in Germany, and whatever, and now here in the beautiful Armenia. I can connect through music. Last night's concert, I sang quite a lot. Some was in English, some was without words at all, because it doesn't matter. And I think I know the connection from my perspective with the audience was genuine and beautiful, and people were together, and people from different, I'll be provocative and say countries, races, right, political, religious persuasions, whatever. Get them in a group, have them in a group, even listening to music, because it does the same thing neurologically when you're listening to music to when you're making it, right? Musicking. They're not fighting. I've never been in an ensemble or conducted an ensemble or sung with a group with people from all over the world. I've never been in one where the people want it to sound bad. I've never been in a group where people want to musically fight. I never have. Everybody instinctively wants to be a member of something that sounds beautiful and it makes them feel good. And it works.
Says a conductor musician, yet also an academic.
Absolutely.
You also
Absolutely.
you've prepared courses.
Yes.
You've designed courses specifically around that.
Yeah.
And I think you worked on something that's called the psychology of
Psychology of risk.
So
Doesn't sound musical.
yeah, but I mean, what in musical terms? I mean, you just told us about the risk factor of a group coming together and how the psychology behind that is, if it's music, then the risk is much less.
And yeah, thank you for picking up on that. I love that. You see, I'm smiling. This is beautiful. I love this. So what is the risk if you're making music together? So let's think about this. Sound is invisible. No one can point at the sound you make and say, oh, that's ugly. No one can point at it and say, I don't know, it's the wrong color, it's the wrong whatever. It's also ephemeral. It disappears as soon as it happens. So you're always moving on. No one can say, hang on a minute, let's just look at the sounds you made. Look at that. Hang on. Yeah.
It's not like a visual.
It's not a visual
creation.
And it also measures time. Music measures time. So you're progressing in your life together. So, but the risk, I was talking about risk. So if you're leading, whether that's conducting, facilitating, whatever it is, if you're leading a group making music, it's your responsibility to have the risk as low as possible. And part of that is by helping people to feel immediately comfortable. And then, that's great. And then what you provide or how you lead them, what you give them, the material to make the music with, always what they bring is enough. Always. Whatever someone brings to the rehearsal, the meeting, whatever, it's always enough, because it will always develop, and people are always more capable making music than they think they are. So the sweet, sweet, sweet pineapple of my life.
I was going to ask where that big pineapple is
called. Oh my God. So the pineapple is, you know what it's like when you can feel that you're appreciated,
right?
Where you can feel that there's a connection, not when you're appreciated, but when the connection's appreciated. So whether it's 1 people, 2 people, 100 people, when you're leading, when you're providing something, and you can see and feel, if you're sighted, you can see, but you can also feel, you can hear, it gets louder, it's more energetic, whatever it is. You can hear and sense these folks feeling confident, being confident together. There's love in that. And when you're a part of that, and maybe you're facilitating that, there's the pineapple.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if they're professional musicians, amateur musicians, who cares? Who cares?
Thank you for this, because it's really something that we were talking about with some colleagues in 2017, 2018, when I was invited to Melbourne for Music Cities Conference. The fact that music is used by cities as a strategy. Its tourism, its infrastructure is built around music. And that's what we were talking about a lot, how that becomes that one city's strategy, and building the city's ecosystem and the economy is built around music. And there are many, many cities around the world that take this and take it all. I was talking about the Montreal Jazz Fest and how that has impacted the city center for now 30 years and more. And people come together to celebrate. And then music does that. That's what music does. And I think it was just a beautiful aha moment for me to be in Melbourne.
Yeah. I love Melbourne.
That was just like perfect city to do this in.
Yeah, I agree. I love that. Can I make a comment on this? Sure. Because, this is something that's very present in my thinking and my mind at the moment. So where I'm currently living in Christchurch in New Zealand, in the Symphony Orchestra, I have a lot to do, of course, with funding bodies, with government, etc. It's part of my job to keep the orchestra going. Advanced music, it's the non-music part. It's not the bit I don't love. But I do like the challenge of communicating effectively. And, people, there's nothing wrong with not knowing. So if you think about funders or you think about politicians who just don't know what you were just talking about, who don't know themselves the value of prioritizing music for the political, social, financial good of the city, right? So part of my job is to explain that, not to try to hammer it home, not to lecture, but to welcome them into the realization and the awareness. It's easy to be lazy, if you like, as an official, to say, well, my city happens to have a lot of music, sure, but my city is prosperous and my city, blah, blah, not to join the dots. And that's dangerous because with funding often, and this is all over the world, funding often, what gets lost? Education, they take the money maybe. They take the money out of the arts because they think it's a nice to have. Such a lazy, and I would say,
Lazy is a good
stupid.
yeah.
Lazy and stupid, right?
But
Yeah. No,
lazy is
let's
also
go with both.
it's easy. It's easy to just say, okay, let's chuck this now,
Totally.
and we'll bring back culture when economy becomes better.
Exactly. And one thing that I will never say to a funder or a government official, I will never say, you better not stop funding because music will stop. I can't honestly say that because music won't stop. Music goes on everywhere. It might not be accessible to everybody if you stop funding it. It might not be promoted. You might not be declaring its value. It might not be as beneficial, but I can't honestly say it'll stop because people in families, people in halls, people in churches, whatever, they will make music. But what is important for me is to help these decision makers understand. That's a huge part of my responsibility.
You're speaking about decision makers. The new government of Armenia, after this revolution that took place, came into power and tried to consolidate and perhaps, make sure that budgets are, tighter. And they brought one big ministry to oversee 4 major different areas: youth, sports, culture, and education. It's handled all by one portfolio.
Right.
Although that portfolio has sub-portfolios, but it shows the priority of that country. When you don't have a minister of culture or a minister of education separately, it really says where the priorities are. Creative industries, music, the film industry, just the amount of money that a film can bring in.
Yeah.
As opposed to, I don't know, they're making yet another website.
Yeah. I mean, how about creativity? And of course, the irony is IT has to be based on creativity.
Yes, you need the creativity to create that technology for it.
And then we're going back to the psychology of risks, because if we're all too frightened to get out of bed and off, we're all too frightened to try something new, to take a few risks, if we're all too frightened to keep playing pinball, right, and just to let that ball,
that's right,
then what do we have? Then we lose self-esteem. I think as any country, we lose group esteem. We lose our confidence. If I can say something that's maybe a little bit cliched, I'm in the business of building confidence. That's what I'm in the business of. The organization that I'm fortunate enough to work for is in the business of building confidence and community through music, right? My academic work is about identifying how to help to build community confidence. And because a confident community too is much more likely to be an understanding community, to not feel threatened by other ideas, to not to feel threatened by other tribes. There's something profoundly human about being artistic, about being musical, and music is profoundly human. So
you're speaking about human. I'm thinking about obviously the elephant in the room, the AI and the technology. And so where does the AI come in terms of creativity when we talk about music? I mean, there are many different platforms that create sound or offer music created through AI. And in that sense, Where do you see this go?
So I appreciate, and I mean appreciate the AI tools and opportunities to be used by humans.
Yes.
I appreciate and understand that, for sure. I think again that the enemy is laziness across a whole bunch of areas. That's the enemy. You can hear the difference. This is a big statement. You can hear the difference between something that's been compiled or composed or curated without human involvement. I'm not going to say created, but you can hear the difference between that and the human spirit at work. So tools, techniques, whatever, totally cool.
And this is true also in visual arts. It's also true in text. The recreation of something that exists, and that's what AI can do. The creation of something new is what the human can do. I think that's the essence of the whole understanding of where and how human AI relations should evolve. And I like that, and I think I will use the laziness more and more when I speak about how things are evolving. We should be lazy.
Getting out of bed in the morning.
That's right.
Really, and open the door and see what's out there.
Can you tell us more about how you felt when coffee spills happen? Maybe that's the emotional part of the coffee spills that you may want to tell us.
Yeah. I felt invalidated, incapable, pretty profound, truly disappointed, and at a complete and utter loss. So those were pretty profound coffee spills. And that's, I thought I was on the trajectory to be a full-time professional symphony orchestra trombone player. And I did a number of auditions, and deep down, I sensed that I couldn't quite crack it. And the closest I came was the kind of runner-up to a couple of very plum jobs. I knew I was second in place. And when I had to acknowledge that I guess I knew it wasn't going to happen, that was very hard to deal with. And I felt very alone. My mentors, my teachers, I couldn't have that conversation with. Similarly, when I was on track and working as an opera singer, I had a conversation with the artistic director of the opera company, the Australian Opera. I did minor roles and I was in the chorus. I was, a minor singer. And I had the conversation where I said, will you take me further? Will you take me further? And he said, you're a great musician. You're way too valuable in your role for me to promote you. And that was a definitive, he was the one person in the country who would make that decision. So that was challenging because that had gone very well to that point.
Unexpected.
Yeah, totally. I then did my master's in conducting. Mm-hmm. When I realized that wasn't going to become an international career, because at every point I was collecting skills. The trombone playing meant that I was a way better singer. My singing meant that I was a way better conductor. That wasn't going to happen. So then from that point, I was conducting, singing, playing, working with some communities in Sydney, in Australia. Didn't understand the value to community. It was just a bunch of jobs. Then I took a job in a small city running the conservatorium.
Yeah.
And then I discovered I was hit in the face by the responsibility of developing in a community, in a small an identifiable community. I went from 5 million people in my community to 40,000. I developed a lot of programs, and the community, I was responsible. I was accountable. And that was a pineapple. And from that point on, 20-something years ago, I've appreciated the power of being able to facilitate to being able to make accessible this wonderful thing, which is making music.
It's so funny that you mentioned this moving from a wide base, because this is something that I lived through as well. I mean, from a very diverse, very multicultural Montreal, I moved to a monoethnic Yerevan with not so many, diversity and different cultures happening. So at that time, a lot of people thought it was a downgrade of sorts. And I didn't really feel it as a downgrade. I thought, there's lots of opportunities. There's a lot to do here. And that was the case. And I proved that to be right. And I think moving to Armenia for me has been one of the biggest pineapples of my life. Yeah, the things that I was able to do just by changing my location and where I do my thing. Yeah. So thank you for that. Yeah.
I understand that. Yeah, because I found accountability, if you like, in a community that was so small, similarly, that I was accountable. Everyone knew me because of my position. Everyone knew me, which meant I got the opportunity to help to develop community. I also went from very diverse community in Sydney and Australia to a monoethnic community. And now I've moved to a larger community. Christchurch, still only 400,000 people. But that sense of accountability and direct connection to the community now is something that is part of me. And that's a golden pineapple.
That's great. I mean, we spoke about coffee spills. We spoke about pineapples. We did the journey of the musician, the opera singer, the academic, right? Having all the way to the conductor and now the CEO. What I want to do is, before I let you go, can you sing to us?
I'd love to sing.
Okay.
Why not?
Yeah. So what are you going to sing?
I'm going to sing a Māori song, a short a waiata, and I'm going to do that because I'm not a native New Zealander, but I feel now, that is my community, I feel now that I'm here in Yerevan, wherever I am, I like to keep that feeling. And I've been allowed to sing this song, or this waiata, or waiata generally. Very, very short. And where will I start it? Maybe I'll start it there. And I'll tell you what it means. Te aroha, te whakapono, me te rangi mari e, tato tato e. That's all I will sing to you. And it means love and peace to you, to all.
Actually, I really felt that. I don't know how, but when you were singing it, was it the way you sang it or the melody itself? That's actually exactly how I felt. I felt there was a lot of love in it, in that few notes that you were singing. I don't know the words, and obviously, thank you for that. And with that, I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for being a guest with us at Disposable Pineapple.